So first of all, what are conjunctions? Conjunctions are, as it says up top, they are joiner words. They are words that create junctions between other words or parts of a sentence. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that right now. Joiner words, they create junctions. What is the main rule regarding conjunctions? The main rule is this. We need to make sure that any conjunctions that we use appropriately reflect the relationship between parts of a sentence. We'll look at example 1 in a second, but I'll give you an even simpler one. He was mean and very fair. So if you look at this sentence, you have your conjunction here. That's your tip-off clue. We'll get to that in a moment. That would be your tip-off clue. What you would have to do is sort of separate the two parts of the sentence, this first part from this second part, and ask yourself, what is the relationship, or how are those two things connected? Well, here you have that this guy was very mean. That is normally considered a really bad thing. And then you have over here that this guy was considered to be very fair. That is normally a very good thing. Well, the conjunction and generally is not used to separate contrasting ideas, things that sort of would seem to contradict each other, and usually joins things that are similar. So what we want to do here is we probably want to change this and to a but. A but does connect ideas, words, phrases, clauses that are contrasting or differing from each other. So that's what we're doing in checking conjunction errors. We are checking to see how the parts of the sentence that are joined by the conjunction relate, and if the conjunction creates the most appropriate or logical connection between the parts. So in example 1, go ahead and do this on your own. Press pause on the video if you would like. In example 1, we have John Adams did not design or promote the Alien and Sedition Acts, and he did sign them into law. So again, that conjunction, that would be our tip-off clue that we need to check conjunctions. And what we would want to do is we want to break the sentence apart, and we would want to ask ourselves how the part that comes before and the part that comes after the and relate. And indeed, in the first part, we have a similar situation to the example I just gave. We have sort of a negative thing here. We have John Adams did not design or promote the Alien and Sedition Acts. So we would expect to see something similar to that after the and, because again, the and connects things that are similar. So if this sentence had said John Adams did not design or promote the Alien and Sedition Acts and did not sign them into law, that and would make complete sense. However, we have, instead of something that agrees with this negative in the first half, we actually have, once again, a positive in the second half. We have that John Adams did sign these into law, and therefore this and does not really make sense. We would again want a but here. He did not design or promote the acts, but he did sign them into law. We have a contrasting set of clauses here, and a but does a better job, a more appropriate job of separating or joining the contrasting ideas than the and does. The tip-off clue is very simple. It is underlined conjunctions. That's your tip-off clue. I'm going to go ahead and list a bunch of the conjunctions. The first set of conjunctions I'm going to list are the fanboys. And fanboys, if you don't know already, stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Fanboys. F-A-N-B-O-Y-S. The fanboys conjunctions. Those are some of the most common conjunctions you'll see on the test. However, there are a bunch more. We have oops, that was supposed to be a C. We have because, we have although, we have when, while, whenever, after, before, since, since, and let's do unless. These are not all the conjunctions. These are just some of the conjunctions. They are some of the ones that you will see on the test, but you could see other ones. The rule down at the bottom, hang on, I gotta fix that. The rule down at the bottom here is very simple, and it's what we already talked about. Ensure the conjunction creates a logical / appropriate link between the joined parts. Now obviously that requires figuring out what the joined parts mean and whether they are similar to each other or contrasting each other, but that is the rule. You just need to make sure that the appropriate conjunction is used depending upon how the parts relate. Now in example 2, go ahead and pause the video, do it on your own. In example 2, again, here's our conjunction at the beginning of the sentence. So we've got two independent clauses here. Here is the first one. Here is the second one. If we look at how these two guys relate, we have most fruits contain a great deal of sugar. That's probably not a good thing. We have fruits providing fiber, antioxidants, vitamins, and water. That actually is a very good thing. At least most would consider that a good thing. So we have contrasting ideas here. Although is the appropriate conjunction when we have contrasting ideas. It is one of the appropriate conjunctions when we have contrasting ideas. So that is page 65. On page 66, we see another conjunction rule that we're going to have to check when we see conjunctions underlined, and this deals with correlating conjunctions. This is about pairing, conjunction pairing. The correlating conjunctions are these pairs of words, either paired with some other word. I don't want to give that one away yet. I'm going to have you guys fill those in, and then neither paired with some other word. Anytime we see these pairs of conjunctions, we just need to make sure that the right conjunction is being used based on the first half of the pair. So I would pause the video right now and try to go ahead and fill in the blanks in these tip-off clues. You've got to fill in these blanks with the appropriate conjunction. Pause the video, do that now. Okay, so filling in these blanks here, we would have either this, and then the appropriate conjunction to use here would be or. This or that. Either this or that. Neither this nor that. Both this and that. Be very careful. ETS will try to confuse you with as well as. They will say both something as well as something else. As well as is not an acceptable pairing with both. Not only this, but also that. Between this and that. Not or. ETS tries to trick students with or sometimes. You cannot put an or in this blank. Whether this or that. There you can put an or. More or less this than that. By the way, than is a conjunction. And then these last two, these are the tough ones. If you're going to have trouble with any of these guys will be the ones. At once this and that, and just as this, so that. If you are interested to know how these two pairings will be used or what they mean, you can always ask your tutor. I'm not going to get into the details of them right now. We will see examples of them in a moment, but you should know that if you see an at once and then a conjunction, that conjunction needs to be an and. If you see a just as and then a conjunction, that conjunction needs to be a so. Now, there is one other note. These guys, again, are tip-off clues for conjunction issues. You have to make sure that the correct conjunction is being paired with the correct first half of the correlative. However, you should also know that these are the tip-off clues for parallelism as well. So parallelism note. Remember that in parallelism, what you were checking was not that the conjunction was correct. What you were checking in parallelism was to make sure that the thing that followed the first half of the correlating pair, the x, and the thing that followed the second half, the y, you needed to make sure they were parallel. So the point here is that there are actually two things you need to check when you see any hints of these correlating conjunctions. One of the things that you have to check is parallelism. You have to make sure that the x and the y are parallel. The x and the y are parallel. And the other thing you have to check is to make sure that the appropriate conjunction is being used according to this list that we just wrote out. Down at the bottom of the page, a couple of examples. Go ahead and do them on your own right now. In example 1 at the bottom of the page here, we have since Watkins neither submitted his proposal on time. Darn it, Watkins! Since Watkins neither submitted his proposal on time, blah, included all of the required documents, the committee had no choice but to reject it. So notice that we have one of our correlative tip-off clues here in the neither, and remember that we need a nor when we are using a neither. Neither nor is the correct pairing. In example 2, we have the skyline was at once magnificent, blank intimidating. Well, remember we said this was one of those tough ones. There's our tip-off, and with that first half, we use in the second half an and. We say at once magnificent and intimidating. Again, if you want more information on what that phrase means or when you would use it, please ask your tutor. Example 3, just as Gabby enjoys a cup of hot tea after dinner, blank, her sister likes a mug of hot chocolate. Again, there's our tip-off, just as, and we said above that we use the conjunction so when we start with just as. Just as Gabby enjoys a cup of hot tea, so her sister likes a mug of hot chocolate. Some students do ask if you can just leave out the conjunction here altogether and just say, just as Gabby enjoys a cup of hot tea, comma, her sister likes a mug. The answer is probably, yes. You could probably just leave out the conjunction altogether and start your next clause with her sister. However, on the SAT, if you do see just as paired with so, you need to know that that is not incorrect. That is perfectly correct. One more conjunction rule. You just need to write this rule down. Do not use plus to mean and. In standard written English, we do not use plus to mean and. You would not say, I was tired plus I hadn't eaten. You would say, I was tired and I hadn't eaten. Plus is considered very colloquial, and again, it is not to be used in standard written English. If you are writing a text to your friend or an email to your friend or perhaps even a memoir, go ahead and use plus. It's probably perfectly fine there. But in standard written English, when you're writing essays in school or a research paper or something like that, you should not be using plus to mean at. The 3 questions on page 67, go ahead and do them right now. Pause the video if you would like, do them on your own, and then come back and join us. Okay, in example 4, we have our conjunction here. We have our conjunction here, the and. So remember what we said we need to do when we see an underlying conjunction. We have to look at what comes before and what comes after, and we need to figure out how they relate. We have winter temperatures on the coast rarely drop below freezing. So in other words, winter temperatures are pretty warm. And then after the and, we have forecasters believe that this winter will be an exception. So that means that, and actually it says this in the sentence, it's going to be cold. So there is a contrast. Before the and, we see that winter temperatures are warm. After the and, we see forecasters believing winter temperatures will be cold. That is not the appropriate conjunction to join contrasting ideas. We should be using a but here, not an and. In example 5, the waiter said we could choose between a baked potato with sour cream or, so there's one of our conjunctions, steamed vegetables. So there's another conjunction. So I chose the vegetables because I had eaten French fries with lunch, and also because vegetables are so much healthier. So we have this first or, so remember what we need to check. We need to check both logic and we need to check pairing, correlative pairing. And indeed, we do have one of our correlatives. We have between this or that. But if you remember from the previous page, we said that we do not use between this or that. We use between this and that. So this or should be an and in order to match the first half of the correlating pair. So the answer there was B. We need and instead of or. And then the last one, number 6, this is a challenging one. When Daryl had initially agreed to let his visiting friends, blah, blah, blah. So our conjunction here is the when. So we need to look at how the two clauses that the when joins are related. We have this clause here where Daryl had initially agreed to let his friends stay indefinitely. So he said, you guys can chill as long as you want. And then this second clause, we have they were so noisy and rambunctious that he asked them to leave. Well, what when indicates as a conjunction is that two things happen at the same time. When I sleep, I snore. That's just an example. It's not true. I don't snore when I sleep. So when I sleep, I snore. These two things are happening at the same time. However, if we look in this sentence, it's pretty clear that these two independent clauses are not happening at the same time. We have Daryl initially agreeing to let his friends stay indefinitely, and then later they were noisy and rambunctious, so he asked them to get the heck out. So the when is obviously not correct here. Now what would we use? Well, probably we would want to use something like although or though. Although Daryl initially agreed to let his visiting friends stay indefinitely, they were noisy and rambunctious, and he said, you guys got to get out. The although indicates or more appropriately reflects the contrasting relationship between the first clause and the second clause. That is it for conjunctions, so just keep in mind when you see a conjunction underlined, the first thing that you want to do is just check the logic, make sure that the conjunction is the appropriate conjunction based on how the parts of the sentence relate to each other. And then the second thing you have to check is if you see one of these correlating conjunction pairs, you need to make sure that the pairing is correct, either or, neither nor.